I'm going to tell you something that will make you uncomfortable. If you think like an employee, you will never build wealth. Never. Not because you lack ability, not because you lack opportunity, but because employee thinking is fundamentally incompatible with wealth building. It's a trap, and almost everyone is caught in it. The trap is invisible because it feels normal. Your parents had employee thinking. Your teachers had employee thinking. Your friends have employee thinking. Society rewards employee thinking in the short term. You get a paycheck. You get security. You get benefits. You get a sense of accomplishment from doing a good job. It all feels right. But here's what nobody tells you. Employee thinking creates a ceiling. A hard ceiling that prevents you from ever building real wealth. And the more competent you are as an employee, the stronger that ceiling becomes. Today, I'm going to show you exactly what employee thinking is, why it destroys wealth, and most importantly, how to escape it. Because here's the paradox. The best employees make the worst entrepreneurs. The most competent people at taking orders become the most stuck people when they need to give themselves orders. But you don't have to be stuck. You don't have to accept that ceiling. Once you understand the trap, you can escape it, and your financial life will never be the same. Let me define employee thinking, precisely because most people don't understand what it is. Employee thinking is a psychological framework where you believe your worth is determined by your job title and your hourly rate. It's a framework where you trade time for money and you optimize for security and predictability. It's a framework where someone else determines your value, and you try to maximize that value within their constraints. Here's what employee thinking looks like in practice. An employee wakes up and thinks, I need to earn $60,000 this year. I'll work 40 hours a week at $30 an hour, and I'll hit my target. That's it. That's the entire mental framework. Work time equals money. More hours equals more money. Better job equals more money per hour. But notice what's missing. There's no thought about creating value that scales. There's no thought about building something that generates income without your time. There's no thought about making your time work for you. There's no thought about ownership. An employee receives a raise and thinks, great, now I make $35 per hour instead of $30 per hour. And they're happy. They've optimized their hourly rate. But they haven't changed the fundamental equation. They still trade time for money. If they work less, they make less. If they stop working, they make nothing. This is the core of employee thinking. Your income is directly proportional to your time. And there's a hard ceiling on how many hours you can work. Even if you worked 80 hours per week, that's double your income at best. Meanwhile, your health is destroyed and your life is gone. This is why employee thinking creates poverty. Not because employees make bad money. Some employees make very good money. But because their income has a ceiling based on time availability. Now let me contrast this with owner thinking. An owner wakes up and thinks, how do I create value that scales without my time? An owner receives a raise and thinks, That's nice, but it doesn't change my fundamental equation because my income isn't proportional to my time. An owner builds a system. They create a product. They build a business. They create intellectual property. And then their income scales independent of their time. A software engineer with employee thinking works for a company, earns $150,000 per year, and trades their time. A software engineer with owner thinking creates software, sells it to 1 million people, and makes $10 million with no additional time investment. Same skill, different thinking, different result. This is the fundamental difference between employee thinking and owner thinking. And this difference compounds into completely different financial lives. Now let me show you how employee thinking specifically traps you. Because it's not just about income ceiling. There are several psychological mechanisms that make employee thinking a trap. First, there's security bias. As an employee, you get a paycheck twice a month. You know exactly how much it will be. You can plan your life around it. This feels safe. And on a psychological level, it is safe in the short term. But on a wealth-building level, it's catastrophic, because safety is the enemy of growth. You cannot build significant wealth while optimizing for security. It's mathematically impossible. To build wealth, you have to take risks. You have to invest in uncertain outcomes. You have to be willing to lose money on experiments. Employees avoid this because they're optimized for security. This is why employees rarely build significant wealth, even when they have high incomes. They take the safe paycheck. They invest in safe index funds with modest 7% returns. They get a mortgage on a house. They max out their 401k. And at age 65, they have maybe $2 million saved. That's not nothing, but it's not wealth. It's the outcome of optimizing for security instead of growth. Second, there's authority bias. As an employee, you don't make decisions. Someone else does. Your boss decides what you work on. Your boss decides how much you get paid. Your boss decides your schedule. Your boss decides your future. And because you don't make decisions, you don't develop decision-making ability. You don't learn what works and what doesn't. You don't develop business intuition. You don't learn to take calculated risks. You just follow instructions. This is comfortable, but it's also crippling. Because wealth building requires making thousands of decisions. You have to decide what business to start. You have to decide what product to build. You have to decide who to hire. You have to decide what risks are worth taking. If you've never made these decisions, you're incompetent at making them. And incompetent decision-making destroys wealth. This is why so many employees fail spectacularly when they try to start a business. They've never developed decision-making capability because they've been outsourcing all decisions to their boss. Third, there's status bias. As an employee, your status is determined by your job title. Senior Vice President sounds impressive. Executive Director sounds important. And on a social level, it is impressive. People respect you. You get invited to the right parties. You feel important. But here's the problem. Job titles are illusions. They don't create wealth. They create appearance of wealth. You can be a senior vice president and be broke. You can be an executive director and have no assets. Meanwhile, the unglamorous business owner with no impressive title might have $50 million in assets. But they don't get invited to the right parties because their title isn't impressive. So employees optimize for impressive titles. They take promotions that look good but don't pay well. They stay in prestigious companies that pay less than startups. They prioritize the title over the wealth because they're thinking like an employee. Fourth, there's effort bias. As an employee, you're rewarded for effort. You work hard. You stay late. You solve problems. You get praised. You get bonuses. You get raises. So employees believe that hard work equals wealth. But hard work doesn't equal wealth. Leverage equals wealth. You can work 100 hours per week and make $100,000 per year. Or you can work 10 hours per week and make $10 million per year if you have leverage. Employees can't conceive of this because they're accustomed to trading time for money. So they keep working harder instead of building leverage, and they stay stuck. Fifth, there's identity. You start thinking of yourself as an employee, not just as someone who has a job, but as your identity. I'm an accountant. I'm a lawyer. I'm a software engineer. This identity is psychologically powerful, but it's also imprisoning, because you make decisions based on identity, not on what creates wealth. An accountant might see an opportunity to start a real estate business, but they don't pursue it because it conflicts with their identity as an accountant. A lawyer might see an opportunity to create software, but they don't because they identify as a lawyer. This identity creates a prison that limits your options and crushes your wealth-building potential.
Let me show you the actual mathematical cost of employee thinking. Because this isn't theoretical, this is concrete. This is money you're leaving on the table. Let's compare two scenarios. Both people have the same starting point. Age 25, college degree, intelligence and opportunity. Person A, employee thinking. Gets hired at company for $80,000 per year. Works hard. Gets 3% raises annually, market rate. Works until age 65. Never starts a business. Never builds assets beyond a house and retirement account. By age 65, they've earned approximately $4.2 million in gross income. After taxes, expenses, and a modest retirement fund, they end up with maybe $1.5 million in net assets. They retire on Social Security and a small pension. It's not horrible, but it's not wealth. Person B, owner thinking. Starts at $80,000 per year at a job, same as person A, for the first 3 years. But they're learning. They're studying how business works. They're building a network. At age 28, they leave and start a business. It's risky. They make less money in years 1 to 2, only $40,000 per year. But in year 3, the business breaks even. In year 4, it's profitable, $60,000. In year 5, it's making $200,000. In year 10, it's making $1 million per year. The business is now their primary income source, but it only requires 10 hours per week because they've built systems and hired people. At age 65, they could sell this business for 5 to 10 times annual revenue. That's $50 to $100 million. Or they could keep running it and generate $1 million plus per year with minimal time invested. The difference between person A and person B isn't intelligence, it's thinking. Person A optimized for secure $80,000 per year. Person B optimized for building something that could scale. Same starting point. different thinking, 50+ million difference. This isn't exceptional. This is what owner thinking creates. But it requires taking risk. It requires making your own decisions. It requires leaving the security of a paycheck. Most employees won't do it because they think like employees. Here's another cost: opportunity cost. While you're working for someone else's company, you're not building your own. While you're solving their problems, you're not solving your own. While you're making them money, you're not making yourself money. This is the invisible cost. It's not calculated in any spreadsheet, but it's real. Let me calculate it. If you spent 2 hours per week on a side business instead of scrolling social media, and you did that for 20 years, and that business generated $1,000 per month by year 5 and $5,000 per month by year 10, by year 20, you'd have a business generating $10,000 plus per month. That's $120,000 plus per year with minimal time invested. That's on top of your salary. But most employees don't do this because they think like employees. They clock out and they're done. They don't have owner mentality where they're always thinking about how to create value. Here's the deepest cost: identity lock-in. Once you think of yourself as an employee, you become one, not just in your job, but in your psychology. You start believing that you need permission to do things. You believe you need someone to hire you. You believe you need security. You believe hard work is how you build wealth. All of these beliefs are employee beliefs, and they make you incapable of building wealth through ownership. This is the real trap. Not the money, but the psychology, the identity, the beliefs that become so ingrained you can't see them. Let me show you the actual mathematical cost of employee thinking, because this isn't theoretical. This is concrete. This is money you're leaving on the table. Let's compare two scenarios. Both people have the same starting point: age 25, college degree, intelligence, and opportunity. Person A, employee thinking, gets hired at company for $80,000 per year, works hard, gets 3% raises annually, market rate, works until age 65, never starts a business, never builds assets beyond a house and retirement account. By age 65, they've earned approximately $4.2 million in gross income. After taxes, expenses, and a modest retirement fund, they end up with maybe $1.5 million in net assets. They retire on Social Security and a small pension. It's not horrible, but it's not wealth. Person B, owner thinking, starts at $80,000 per year at a job, same as person A, for the first 3 years. But they're learning. They're studying how business works. They're building a network. At age 28, they leave and start a business. It's risky. They make less money in years 1 to 2, only $40,000 per year. But in year 3, the business breaks even. In year 4, it's profitable, $60,000. In year 5, it's making $200,000. In year 10, it's making $1 million per year. The business is now their primary income source, but it only requires 10 hours per week because they've built systems and hired people. At age 65, they could sell this business for 5 to 10 times annual revenue. That's $50 to $100 million. Or they could keep running it and generate $1 million plus per year with minimal time invested. The difference between person A and person B isn't intelligence, it's thinking. Person A optimized for secure $80,000 per year. Person B optimized for building something that could scale. same starting point. Different thinking. 50+ million difference. This isn't exceptional. This is what owner thinking creates. But it requires taking risk. It requires making your own decisions. It requires leaving the security of a paycheck. Most employees won't do it because they think like employees. Here's another cost. Opportunity cost. While you're working for someone else's company, you're not building your own. While you're solving their problems, you're not solving your own. While you're making them money, you're not making yourself money. This is the invisible cost. It's not calculated in any spreadsheet, but it's real. Let me calculate it. If you spent 2 hours per week on a side business instead of scrolling social media, and you did that for 20 years, and that business generated $1,000 per month by year 5 and $5,000 per month by year 10. By year 20, you'd have a business generating $10,000 plus per month. That's $120,000 plus per year with minimal time invested. That's on top of your salary. But most employees don't do this because they think like employees. They clock out and they're done. They don't have owner mentality where they're always thinking about how to create value. Here's the deepest cost. Identity lock-in. Once you think of yourself as an employee, you become one. Not just in your job, but in your psychology. You start believing that you need permission to do things. You believe you need someone to hire you. You believe you need security. You believe hard work is how you build wealth. All of these beliefs are employee beliefs, and they make you incapable of building wealth through ownership. This is the real trap, not the money, but the psychology, the identity, the beliefs that become so ingrained you can't see them. Let me show you exactly how employee thinking causes you to miss wealth-building opportunities. Because opportunities are everywhere, but employees can't see them. Here's why. First, employees are taught to follow instructions, not to identify problems. This is actually good in an employee context. You don't want employees identifying problems and going rogue. You want them following the system. But this training destroys your ability to see opportunities. An opportunity is just an unsolved problem that you can profit from. But if you're trained to follow instructions instead of identify problems, you'll never see opportunities. You'll walk past them daily. Second, employees are risk averse. They optimize for not failing. This makes sense in an employment context. If you take risks and fail, you get fired. So employees learn to be conservative, but wealth building is built on calculated risks. You have to be willing to fail. You have to be willing to lose money on experiments. You have to be willing to look stupid pursuing something that might not work. Employees can't do this because failure feels like getting fired. Third, employees think short-term. They think month to month, paycheck to paycheck, quarter to quarter, bonus cycles, year to year, evaluation cycles. But wealth is built over decades. A business might lose money for 3 years before becoming profitable. An employee can't think this way. They need immediate income. Fourth, employees don't understand leverage. They understand trading time for money. But leverage is different. Leverage is using other people's money, other people's time, other people's effort, systems, technology, networks. Employees don't think about these things. So when they do start businesses, they try to do everything themselves. They can't scale because they don't understand leverage. Fifth, employees are taught to optimize for someone else's goals. They're taught to make their boss look good, to make their company successful. but they're not taught to optimize for their own goals. So when given the choice between a safe paycheck and risky opportunity that could change their life, they take the paycheck because their training says, secure your position. Don't take risks. Keep your job. Here's a concrete example. A software engineer working at a tech company sees a problem that their company isn't solving. They could build a product to solve it. They could charge $50 per month to 1,000 customers. That's $600,000 in annual revenue. Potential to grow to 10,000 customers for $6 million. But the engineer has employee thinking. So they think, that might fail. I might lose money. I might look stupid. I should focus on my job. I get a paycheck. I have benefits. I have security. So they do nothing. Someone else sees the same problem. They build the product. 5 years later, it's a $10 million business. The engineer is still working their job, still secure, still safe, still poor relative to what they could have been. This happens constantly because employee thinking is the majority mindset. So how do you escape employee thinking? How do you transition from trading time for money to building systems that generate income? The first step is awareness. You have to see the trap. Most people never do. They just accept that this is how life works. You work for someone else, you get a paycheck, that's it. But now you know the trap, so you've already taken the first step. The second step is education. You need to understand how business works, how leverage works, how systems work, how you create value. Most schools don't teach this. Your parents probably didn't teach this. So you have to educate yourself, read books about business, study entrepreneurs, learn how companies actually make money. This is the foundation. Third, you need to practice thinking like an owner, even while you have a job. Start asking yourself owner questions. What problems do I see that I could solve? What value could I create? Who would pay for this? How would I deliver this? What leverage could I use? These aren't just theoretical questions. They retrain your brain to see opportunities. After 30 days of asking these questions daily, your brain starts naturally seeing opportunities. Fourth, you need to start small. Don't quit your job and bet everything on a business. That's reckless. Instead, start a side business. Spend 5 hours per week on it. Make your first $100, then your first $1,000, then your first $10,000. This gives you proof that owner thinking works. It builds confidence. It teaches you that you can be responsible for your own income. Most people never do this. They think, if I'm going to do it, I need to commit fully. So they don't do it at all. But small is better than nothing. Small is how you build. Fifth, you need to build skills that create value. Not skills that look good on a resume, but skills that solve real problems. Writing, marketing, sales, product building, problem solving, leadership. These are skills that transfer to business. If you're a developer, learn marketing. If you're in marketing, learn product. If you're in sales, learn operations. Build a diverse skill set that lets you create value across multiple domains. Sixth, you need to develop a network. Most employees don't think about networking for business. They network for jobs. But networks are the most valuable business asset. They're where deals come from. They're where you find partners. They're where you find customers. Spend time building real relationships with people who are thinking about business. Not networking events where you hand out cards, but real relationships. Seventh, you need to change your identity. Stop thinking of yourself as I'm a software engineer or I'm an accountant. Start thinking I'm someone who creates value and solves problems. This subtle shift changes everything. Because now you're open to any opportunity that creates value. You're not locked into a specific identity. You're not limited to problems within your domain. Eighth, you need to take calculated risks, not reckless risks, but calculated risks. Study the risk, understand the downside. Make sure you can afford to lose, then take it. This is where most employees fail. They can't take risks because they're psychologically trained to avoid them, but wealth requires risk. There's no other way. Ninth, you need to think long term. Start thinking in 10-year horizons instead of year to year. Where do I want to be in 10 years? What do I need to build to get there? What risks am I willing to take? What sacrifices am I willing to make? This long-term thinking changes your decision-making. You become willing to lose money short-term if it builds long-term wealth. 10th, you need accountability and environment. Surround yourself with people who think like owners, not employees. The people you spend time with shape your thinking. If everyone around you has employee thinking, you'll stay stuck. If everyone around you is building businesses, thinking about leverage, taking calculated risk, you'll naturally start thinking this way too. Environment is destiny in this regard. Once you make this transition from employee thinking to owner thinking, your life changes fundamentally. And I want you to understand this because it's the real benefit. It's not just money, though money is part of it. First, there's freedom. As an employee, someone else controls your time. Someone else decides your schedule. Someone else decides when you can take vacation. Someone else decides if you have a job. As an owner, you control your time. You might work more initially, but it's your choice. You can take a week off whenever you want. You can take a month off. You can restructure your business to require less time. This freedom is intoxicating. You realize how imprisoned you were as an employee. Second, there's agency. As an employee, you're a victim of circumstances. The company decides to downsize. You're out. The market changes. Your job becomes less valuable. You're stuck. As an owner, you have agency. Things don't go according to plan, you adapt. Market changes, you pivot. You're not a victim. You're an agent in your own life. This is incredibly empowering. Third, there's unlimited upside. As an employee, your income has a ceiling. Even the CEO of a company makes millions, which is awesome, but still limited. As an owner, there's no ceiling. Build a successful business, and you can make $1 million plus annually. Build a very successful business, and you can make $10 million plus. Build an exceptional business, and you can make $100 million plus. The scale isn't limited by your time. It's limited by your execution and the market size. Fourth, there's purpose. As an employee, you're executing someone else's vision. You're helping them achieve their goals. This can feel meaningful, but it's still their vision. As an owner, you're executing your own vision. You're creating something you believe in. You're solving problems you care about. This sense of purpose is profound. It's the difference between working for a mission and having a mission. Fifth, there's wealth. Yes, I saved this for last, but it's real. Owner thinking leads to wealth in a way that employee thinking cannot. Because owners build assets. Assets generate income independent of time. Assets appreciate. Assets can be sold. Owners go from trading time for money to owning systems that generate money. That's the path to actual wealth. 6, there's legacy. As an employee, you work, you retire, you're forgotten. The company continues without you. Your contribution is absorbed into the organization. As an owner, you build something that outlasts you. Your business continues. Your products continue helping people. Your ideas continue influencing people. You leave a legacy. This is profound. The psychological shift from employee thinking to owner thinking isn't just about money. It's about freedom, agency, purpose, and legacy. So here's where we are. I've shown you that employee thinking is a trap. It feels safe in the short term, but it destroys wealth building in the long term. It creates a ceiling. It trains you to optimize for the wrong things. It teaches you to avoid risks. It locks you into an identity that prevents you from seeing opportunities. But I've also shown you that this isn't permanent. You're not stuck in employee thinking forever. You can transition to owner thinking. It requires awareness. It requires education. It requires practice. It requires taking small calculated risks. It requires building skills. It requires patience. But it's doable, and the rewards are enormous. The choice is yours. You can continue thinking like an employee. Keep your job, get your paycheck, feel secure, retire with a modest amount saved. That's a valid choice. There's nothing wrong with it. Many people are happy with that life. But if you want to build actual wealth, if you want freedom, if you want agency over your life, you have to stop thinking like an employee. You have to start thinking like an owner. And you have to start today. Not next month, not next year. Today. Today you can ask yourself, what problem could I solve? What value could I create? What small business could I start with 5 hours per week? What skills do I need to learn? What network do I need to build? What small risk could I take? These aren't just questions. They're the beginning of your transition from employee thinking to owner thinking, from trading time for money to building systems that generate wealth, from being stuck to being free. The choice is yours. Choose wisely.